You might want to change your titles on Restream. You have it set to a Restream link. In Restream titles, yeah, you can change all titles. Right now, it has it set to powered by Restream, and it sends people to Restream. In titles or in settings, or it's the second screen. It's a tab. I had to log in to find it. I'm not 100% sure. Update titles right next to add channels.
You guys, how do I sound now? How do I sound now?
Quiet.
Okay. Do you hear me at all?
I hear you better now.
So it's better without the earbuds then?
It's louder.
Okay, good. Good. What about now? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Louder?
Yep.
Okay. You guys, how do I sound now?
A little quieter.
What about now?
Quiet.
Okay. What about now?
Quiet.
Okay. Is this louder, you guys?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, you're good. My Twitch is already pulling up your stream, so it looks good. I found the YouTube stream, and it looks like Facebook is live too. If you if on Facebook, if you mention Balanced Breakfast, I can like it as Balanced Breakfast as well. Yeah, you're good. My Twitch is already pulling up your stream, so it looks good. I can hear myself. I found the YouTube stream, and it looks like Facebook is live too. I can hear myself, which is weird. If you, I think I can hear myself on Facebook already.
Okay, guys, I think I'm going to run without the headphones because you can hear me better without them. Hey, before we start, can I show you something very quickly? I'm going to show you, I'm going to attempt to show you the view of the Bay Area. Never mind. Never mind. Yeah, the rumors are true. Yeah, I'm in a backyard terrace in my new place. Well, I would if I had better microphone. Sure, yes, absolutely. Yeah, copy that. I'm doing it now. Guys, how's my audio now? Coming in? Okay.
It's the end, my friends, and we don't have a place to go. Talk to me, can you see? We're living in a land of false dreams, and we are standing with both of our feet off the ground. We'll all lose if we choose not to find some common ground. You deny while people die. Your thinking is quite unsound. Have to turn this thing around. We have to turn this thing around. Or we lose. This warning, we're past the point of no return. It's the end. Welcome to Sunday Live, here with myself, Caleb, and our co-host Joe Price is online, and our guest Stefan Aronsen is online. We'll be bringing them on in just a moment. First of all, that was the acoustic version of It's the End. That will be a single this fall. And if folks are familiar with the regular version, because they've heard it live or on the show before, we're going to be playing a new video for it a little later on in this episode. Hey Frank, welcome. Hey Sherry, welcome. I see folks are popping up online here. Now, if you do have a question for our guests, we do have a chat room right here appearing over my right shoulder, and you can feel free to put a comment in there. It'll show up for me, and we can... I'm pretty sure our guests are monitoring Facebook so they can chat back. So without further ado, Stefan Aronsen is our guest this week. He is an organizer, promoter, and disc jockey, and I'm going to bring him on right now. Hey, Joe, where's Stefan?
Yes. I see him.
Right there.
So, Stefan, you guys say something so Zoom flips over to you.
I gotcha. I think I had to change my settings.
Oh, there you are.
There, I'm good.
Yeah, I think it just detects who's talking and flips. So, Stefan, thank you for jumping in on this week's episode on short notice. We had a couple other guests lined up, but schedules being what they are, we had to shuffle people around, and we got you sooner than later, which is awesome.
Yay!
I'm thinking I'm going to switch you guys to gallery view so we can see you both. There we go. And welcome, folks. I see a few more folks have jumped online. I appreciate the support week in, week out. As you guys know, I committed to a friend to doing this show every week, 5 to 6, for the next year. And see what came of it. Sometimes you do an experiment and you let things percolate up, and you get to find out all sorts of cool stuff. So, Stefan, you are the founder of, well, co-founder, but really.
Yeah, so I mean,
for years and years,
I always like to say that I co-found Balanced Breakfast because I think it leaves room for the other people that are involved to like feel like, oh man, he's showboating. He's putting himself front and center. And I go, no, this is like not possible without like the people that were at the first meeting, without Andy Freeman, who was like bouncing ideas off of me, and like all the leaders that were like, why doesn't this exist in my city? And I'm like, well, let's do it. So I really like the idea of being a co-founder, even if it's like I kind of run with it with all my ideas of how community should be created. But yeah, the gist is Balanced Breakfast is trying to bring people in the music industry together. We're trying to help you meet your next friend, best friend, your band member, someone to be a housemate with, or someone to talk to when you're stuck in quarantine, perhaps. So we went from meeting in person to meeting online, which was a huge change. And yeah, we're just trying to facilitate being social in an industry that can sometimes feel really antisocial and secluded. That's my gist.
Not to mention competitive.
Yeah, super competitive.
Yeah, I noticed that coming up to Seattle outside of San Francisco, that the competitiveness was taken to a whole nother level. San Francisco seems more like, people, friends getting together to have a good time, play some shows. But when I got up to Seattle, it was like, what scene are you in? What bands are you in? Don't dare book. Don't get booked instead of me. It was a lot more competitive.
I mean, definitely. I think. I think I've seen the effect of Balanced Breakfast on the San Francisco scene in that like people talk more, people make friendships, people like feel like there's accountability for like helping those that are new to the scene come up the ladder. And I would like to think that Balanced Breakfast played a role in that, and that like that we set the tone for how to like communicate and how to do it in a friendly way.
Well, I came in, I didn't have any community other than a few friends I was doing music projects with, and we occasionally do some shows, neck of the woods, and around the Bay Area. And when I got your message to join a rock lotto band, it opened up my whole world, because suddenly I had...
Balanced Breakfast played a role in that, and that like that we...
Stefan's monitoring the stream at the same time. Your message to join a rock lotto band.
I think I'm muted, but...
Huh. Joe, are you streaming?
We now return to your regularly scheduled programming.
It was Joe. Sorry, Stefan. Yeah, it gave me instantly a community in San Francisco and Oakland and San Jose, and suddenly I'm playing live shows with people and rehearsing with different bands. It really was night and day.
That's awesome. That's the goal, is that like, I mean, I originally thought that the music scene was this secret club and everybody was hanging out, and the like friendships were being formed in the back green room, and all these musicians were talking, and I was missing the conversations, and I was like feeling left out. And as I've gotten deeper into the music industry, I've discovered that like more often the green room is just a place to drop your guitar, drop your bags, and there's not a lot of like bands like hanging out and talking back there. So that's hopefully what Breakfast is doing, is like, hey, come get a cup of coffee, get a pastry, sit across from someone and be like, hey, what's your story?
And I like that really structure. Danny and Ronan up here in Seattle let me merge the Balanced Breakfast Seattle, which had died off, into one event. And we started doing these live events. They were getting traction, and people were coming and starting to share ideas. And I remember we had you as a guest, and rather than someone on stage talking and everybody listening, and then little groups, you put everybody in a circle, and everybody shared, and everybody listened, and you could just feel a complete different shift in mood.
Yeah. I mean, I like giving other people the spotlight. I like the opportunity to say, hey, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. Okay, now the spotlight's on you, and let's talk about what you're doing. And that gets me all pumped up. And then when it's someone's first time, I always like it when people cheer and are like, yeah, first time, yeah. It's more exciting that way.
Yeah. And I've worked on videos, songs, played live shows, all because of conversations that had happened at Balanced Breakfasts, where someone said, "This is what I'm about." I'm like, "Hey, I've been looking for you."
Yeah. Yeah, it is so much easier in the video chat when I put it in the grid view and I see people start getting excited. I see people smiling, and I see people be like, oh, I want to be connected to that person that just talked. Oh, and then chats show up on the right side, and they're like, hey, afterwards, like hit me up because I want to talk about what you just said. That's fun. It happens in person, but usually it's like slightly delayed because everybody knows, oh, I can get them. After we drink coffee and have some pastries, I can catch them again. I'll get them later.
I've had that happen with podcasts such as this one. I've had that happen here, in fact, so I can relate.
Yeah, podcasting is. I mean, it's interesting how podcasting is changing as well. The idea that like, all right, well now again we can't gather. So people are hopefully looking for new ways to connect, and podcasting definitely is a way to connect.
Yeah, truly. Now, I wanted to show a little bit of the video, the historical videos about Balanced Breakfast, to give people a flavor of what we're talking about. So this is the young Stefan talking about how Balanced Breakfast got started, and then we're going to jump to a video where folks are asked, what is Balanced Breakfast?
What is that thing? For years and years and years, I've been trying to learn an instrument, to be a musician, to play music, and I failed at everything that I've tried. I can't play music at all. And I suddenly realized that my ultimate goal wasn't to be a musician, but to be the absolute best groupie that I could possibly be. I found myself with a community, but it was a community of musicians that was built into the venue. Someone I knew through going to shows, someone I knew through social media hit me up. That guy was Andy Freeman. And he said, hey, let's get a burger. He had all these plans about, all right, so we're going to start a record label, we're going to get all these musicians organized, we're going to take over the world, we're going to make this huge empire, we're going to do all these things. And I was like, well, let's meet next week, but let's invite our friends. I'm normally that guy that's like popcorning all over the place, and this particular time I feel like I was like, hey, let's start small and just say, let's see who else thinks this is cool. And so we met one more time at a place called Jim's on Mission Street, and we were 5 people maybe. And at the time I had no idea that like 5 people at a diner would suddenly become 5+ cities. Is ridiculous growth. Like, that doesn't even make sense. But that's kind of how breakfast started. Was that like, let's just come together and hang out. And it splinters into an Oakland group, and then it branches out into a San Jose group, and then all of a sudden Boston exists, and Nashville, and Austin, and LA, and San Diego, and Toronto. Yeah. Like we knew. What is Balanced Breakfast?
Balanced Breakfast is community.
Balanced Breakfast is awesome.
Looking good. Looking good. I'll take it, bud. Yeah. No. How you doing? You too.
Balanced breakfast is amazing!
Balanced Breakfast is yeah!
Balanced breakfast is delicious!
Balanced Breakfast is musical inspiration.
Oh, balanced breakfast.
So that was a couple promo videos for Balanced Breakfast. The one that gave the history, they're available on the Balanced Breakfast YouTube site. And you can watch the full history and the full what is Balanced Breakfast off of that site. But, you know, having watched that clip of yourself, how many years has it been?
So November of 2013 is when Andy and I first had a meeting, and we were 5 people. And what what happened is that originally he saw me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, let's get together and have a meal." And so our schedules were really complicated, so the only time that worked was early, and he had a lot of ideas for grandiose things that freaked me out because everybody is saying the music industry is dying. And so I was like, well, this was fun. Let's do it again. And so the first meeting had 5 people, and we did it again, had 7 people, did it again, had 10 people. Pretty soon we outgrew the little table that I first saw us like occupying for months or years. And then we're suddenly like taking over like an entire cafe, and it's just like, uh-oh, this is a thing.
You said, uh-oh, this is a thing. Were you not ready for that success?
I guess the when we started doing the meetings, it didn't have a name. So it wasn't like something where we said, let's start something. We're going to call it Balanced Breakfast. It's going to bring people together. It's going to be in multiple cities, and it's going to make people feel like they're connected. No, we were like, hey, what if you call your friends and I'll call my friends, and we see who wants to come have $5.55 breakfast on Thursday morning, because it was like a special they were doing.
Got it.
That was about as far as we got. We were like, that's an amazing deal. And then eventually went up to $7.77, and now it's kind of expensive.
I love that the timeline of Balanced Breakfast's organization is based on the price of the breakfast.
Yeah, it was a really good price the first time we met, and it slowly went up.
And that's sort of an interesting metaphor for not only Balanced Breakfast as a breakfast, but as an experience. It started off as this group of people getting together, talking about music and whatnot. But like as everybody saw in that last clip, there was live bands going on there. So it went from a conversation and meeting group, as you saw in the first clip, where folks are getting together initially for breakfast, and then these larger and larger gatherings. But eventually then it branched out into live shows. What was that transition like?
Yeah. The live shows kind of got triggered from us talking and saying, well, we've been meeting for a little while. We've been talking about how the music industry should be. We've been talking about ways that we can better approach the music industry, and kind of two things happened around the same time. We were like, well, let's put that to practice. Well, let's check out this thing called South by Southwest. Maybe we can do a residency to raise money to go to South by Southwest. So it was like a double whammy. So it was pretty wild that like a bunch of people who hadn't played together were like all pumped up about the idea of like organizing shows where they got to play. Kind of showed how important shows are in the community.
Yeah, because you not only built up these individual meetings city by city, Now you have these global chat sessions where different cities are talking to each other. Then Rock Lotto happened, and that's how I first got involved. And then you started having Balanced Breakfast, which was a series of live venues over several days. Then you start having the Balanced Breakfast Conference over 2 days. We've done 2 of those. That's a lot of different things.
It was basically like we had the breakfast, and that was cool. And what was happening was people would come for a certain time, and then they'd be like, all right, well, these conversations were great. I've learned a lot. But what else is there? So people would start getting antsy and be like, okay, well, what happens now? So I was like, okay, well, what does happen now? So that was that was kind of like after we had done meetings and after we had done shows and after we had introduced evening meetings, because people were like, 8 a.m., that's so early. So we started doing 8 p.m. as well. And then I was like, okay, I think we need a music summit. And that's scary because that's a heck of a lot of money up front to do something like that. And it went well. And I said, okay, I guess we're doing that again. But I still felt like people were like, what now? So then we did the Balanced Breakfast, and we did 7 venues, and that went well, though it was absolute pure chaos. That's changed a little bit because we changed it to be 1 venue after doing 7 venues, which you would think you'd go the other way around, but I think we started crazy and then went back to a little bit of sanity. So we're just trying to figure out new ways to build on that, like new ways to grow, new ways to give opportunities. And and I guess you could also throw in the fact that we tried to create an app with the idea that we're started in San Francisco, so Silicon Valley, so Balanced Breakfast should have an app. And for anybody who's out there thinking about building an app, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and then you put it out in the ether for people to partake in, and you think, oh, it'll be perfect. And then Facebook updates something, Instagram updates something, Apple updates something, Google updates something, and you're like, but I spent all my money on the app already, and you want more money to fix it? And it broke, and it broke, and it broke. So we put a little brakes on that, a little pause. So if you're going to make an app, make sure you've got the money to make the app and then the money to support the fixing of the app.
Man, I hear you. I'd say every week, all the work I'm doing with bands and with friends with software companies, it is a never-ending steeplechase of trying to fix things and keeping things current when something's tied to another thing.
And it's like, it's so exciting for what could exist, and then it does exist for a period of time, and you like cradle your baby and you're like, you're so pretty, and then it breaks and you go, I hate you, and then you take money out of your pocket and you're like, this is my last one, I'm running out here. So
oh yeah, I hear you there. It is tricky, and I know Danny Schwartz, who was a part of the behind the scene Balanced Breakfast scene up here in Seattle before COVID-19 hit and changed everything. He's working on an app called Showground, and him and some buddies, and it's pretty intense. And they've been working on it for years, and they're just doing it for the Seattle area. And then as the platform builds, they're going to move to other areas. And of course, no one's playing live, so it's kind of like you built this app for this thing. You thought, no way is music not going to happen live ever. And so they've have a good year of no gigs to promote.
Yeah, it's hard to decide what to develop for. Do you develop for being stuck in your house and being asked not to hug people, or do you develop for your goal of hanging out in large groups and being in a mosh pit? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to play a clip from a Rock Lotto. Again, we're talking about Balanced Breakfast, a music organization across the United States and now international, because we got a Columbia crowd. And I saw one of the stars on the original map was somewhere in Canada. I wasn't sure. I don't think there is a city where that star appeared in Canada.
in Toronto, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I think it's a little closer down to the Great Lake.
There's one in Boston as well.
And the well, anyhow, I'm going to play this clip. So we're talking about Balance Breakfast, the development, all the different groups, and how Rock Lotto was the first live scene, I think, that came around, right? That was before the fest and the conference. So here is my second Rock Lotto, where I got paired with a guy in San Jose. We did the song together. We did it for Rock Lotto. The single's being produced. You heard in the opening credits an acoustic version that's being produced by my buddy Tim Lane. And this version we did at Rock Lotto. And then he's like, hey, I'm a DJ in San Jose City College. Why don't you come down and be on my show? So suddenly we started doing radio performances. We did an Audio Chairs performance. We did a Caleb acoustic performance on his show. And that led me to mentioning to Stefan, hey, you got a show too, and appearing on your show in San Francisco. Are you guys still able to do that show?
Our podcast?
Yeah.
We took a major break on it, and we're starting it up again next Sunday.
Cool. All right. Well, here's a clip of myself and Jeff doing a song at a Rock Lotto in San Francisco. All right, that was the live version of It's the End. On previous shows, I've shown you the full music video and given you a sneak peek on that. You heard the acoustic version during the opening credits, and that is the live version done during a Rock Lotto with the organization Balance Breakfast, ran by Stefan Aronsen. who is our guest today. Now, Stefan talked about how Balanced Breakfast went from meeting for breakfast, large gatherings, into the rock lotto performances, into a festival, and into a conference. But his adventure wasn't over with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this would have been our, okay, 1, 2, 3. I think this would have been our 5th South by Southwest. It gets a little bit blurry sometimes, but I believe this would have been our 5th. And it was super organized, and we had sponsors, and we had it all lined up, and we had 2 venues, and we had 6 days, 5 of them being performance days, and 1 of them being a meetup day. So it was the biggest South by Southwest that we were going to do. And so I bought a plane ticket from San Francisco to Portland to New York to Austin to Bogota, and then Bogota back to San Francisco. And it was gonna be a 3-month adventure, like hitting up all the breakfast cities that needed like a little like I don't know, like just to get like hurrah, like let's do this. So like let's meet in Portland, let's meet in Seattle, let's start one in New York, let's meet in Austin. And I made it to Portland, and things are getting a little like, what's going on here? Something's weird. There's this COVID thing, like it might be ending things. And while I was in Portland, the official South by Southwest got canceled, and I was like, okay, well, that's a super bummer, but okay, we still got this. We still have our venue, so it'll be fine. So I flew from Portland to New York, and then unofficial venues started being like, this isn't a good idea. And I was like, I think we're good. I think we're good. And all of a sudden it was like that realization that that I had to make an organization choice, not just a Stefan choice of like, I want to be at a show. I want to like hang out with people. I want to like do something rock and roll. And I was like, thinking as an organization, okay, well, we have to be accountable for people's health. We have to be accountable for choices made for like the possibility of like getting someone sick or spreading the coronavirus. And so it was like, I had to call both venues and say, this isn't happening. Message all the bands, and we had 60 plus bands scheduled. I say, this isn't happening. And that was hard. That was like those adult choices you don't want to make. And I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to be stuck here in New York for a little bit. I rescheduled my plans and changed my trip from going to Austin to go to South America, and then the border of South America closed. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be here a little longer than I had planned to be. And then suddenly 3 months later, I'd been stuck in New York for 3 months because you're not supposed to travel, not supposed to go places. Yeah, that was not how I saw the last 3 months going.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, that's intense. You've done like years have led up to that moment, and that planning and those connections and whatnot, and all of a sudden you're just watching doors close one after another. I know here in Seattle, my wife had bought a place up in Seattle, so I was still living in San Jose and was coming up to Seattle to help set up the new place. Eventually, in a year, I'd move up here. I'm still a resident of California. My health insurance is through California. That's a connection. So, and I'm helping my parents out. And suddenly I'm up here, and they're like, no, you're not traveling. Your elderly parents, love them, but stay away from them. Do not get on a plane and then show up and shake their hands. Don't leave your house, and don't travel. It was a huge shift, and I had scheduled a bunch of shows up here to do with a buddy of mine I met through Balanced Breakfast, Charlie Rice, and we did the first show, and everybody was talking about it. But it was like, this might blow over kind of thing, and you're not sure how serious it is. We've all been here with N1H1, and the bird flu and whatnot. So we're kind of like, what's the balance here? We did the first show, and then it was like just everything shut down. And the next topic people had was, what's the responsible thing to do? There's this underground show happening over here. Should I do it? Should I not?
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard when I came back from New York. And the idea is you're supposed to quarantine for a certain amount of time or try to like avoid certain people for a certain amount of time. I went to my brother's before I went to my parents. And then I was like, I had all these rules for my parents. I was like, okay, so I'm going to be staying with you, but I want you to be healthy. And I tried to enforce those, but they were like, no, you're in our house now. We want hugs. We haven't seen you in 3 months. So they quickly brought me into their circle and were like, okay, now you're in our circle. So it's like, that's it.
The 2-week timer is started. We'll see how it goes. The good news is probability is towards you. If you're coming amongst family groups and whatnot, the probability is low. It's just that if it happens, it's a tragedy. So it's a real tough call to make. Yeah,
I accomplished a full week of like after travel. I stayed away from my parents for a full week, and I was gonna try to like stay away longer, but they were just like, no, we want you here. And I was like, it's hard to argue when they're like, no, here now.
Right. And well,
give us a hug.
At least they get to make the decision, right? They get to make the call.
Yeah.
And therefore everybody has an agreement.
Yep.
And
just trying to be a responsible son.
I just showed a picture of you on the plane. What was that like?
What was it like being on a plane?
Yeah, I showed a picture of you.
I had a nonstop flight from New York to Portland because I really didn't want to do a layover. I wanted any time spent in an airplane to be one airplane. But the night before my flight, they canceled my flight and put me on a connecting flight through Seattle. And I will say the things that were weird. The JFK was absolutely empty. There was nobody in JFK. It was deserted. Most of the businesses are closed. I think there was one cafe that was open, maybe a bookstore. Nobody's hanging out. And then they boarded the plane the way I feel like they should always board the plane, from the back to the front, which I was like, I love that there's no priority of where when you checked in, what your level is as far as being an airline member. It's just like, if you're sitting in the back, you should go in first so that we don't have to pass you when we go in. Pretty smart. And then they didn't sell any middle seats, so the flight was sold out, but with aisle and window seats, so there was at least a seat's distance between me and the other person. And then when I got to Seattle, connected onto a smaller plane with propellers, and they did something very similar. It was it was 2 seats on either side, and they didn't put anybody in the second seat. So you basically everybody was in a window seat. And then arriving in Portland was absolutely dead. There was nobody along the curb to be picked up. There was no cars lined up to try to get a parking spot next to the curb. And there were no police officers like telling cars to move along because there were no cars. It was different.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was clean.
It's clean. I can imagine. But yeah, it's still trippy. Still very strange. I know here that we go walking through the hills, and the traffic is picked up, and you see more and more people walking their dogs and whatnot. But for a while there, it was we didn't see anybody. Everybody's really good about, if someone's coming your way, you cross the street, or you go out into the bike lane and come back in, and everybody says hi and whatnot. So far here, everybody seems pretty accepting of the situation. It's a semi-suburban area, so most people stay inside, watch TV, play games, etc. The big things was shutting down the stores and malls, but then again, we have Amazon that can drop everything off on your doorstep. So I wouldn't say that we've really gotten to experience any major difference in our lives over this because I'm here in the studio most of the time. But to go out to airports and travel and just see, all the terminals abandoned must be really strange.
But I will say the mask culture in New York is much different than the mask culture in the Northwest. When I was in Brooklyn, if you left your house, you put on your mask, and when you were walking around the neighborhood, you had your mask on, and anytime you were just being, your mask was on. And I feel like the culture is anytime you walk into a store, there's an 80 to 85% chance that you're wearing a mask, but not 100%. And that was kind of shocking to me at first. I walked into a 7-Eleven in Portland, and I was the only one with a mask on, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, I get that you could be in your car without a mask. I get that you could be walking around outside without a mask, but I just thought it was a given. Anytime you walked into a store, you'd have a mask, and they're just like, oh no, I'm getting a Slurpee.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure across the country you're getting a range of this. And as the resurgence of phase 1 is hitting now, people are rethinking the behavior. It seems like a lot of the time, and we invested for 3 months to dip this down. Within a couple weeks, got an opposition, and that opposition has played out. So there's now a new resurgence, but that's not even counting when the fall comes and that peak. So I think it's tough for some parts of the country to grapple with it. I think in New York, people are used to living tight together, having to have rules of engagement from different communities, etc., and for them to be that more social sense. Also, San Francisco, I would say, has that as well. There's this sense that you're all a melting pot of people who are in this together in a small, tight place. And so it's just, oh, I need to do this. Okay, you just do it. There's no saying, why should I do this? The pushback, right? It's like the culture of pushing back. It's like, hey man, you probably shouldn't cut yourself with a knife, and immediately hearing, it's my right to cut my own body up with a knife if I want. I think in those areas, it just physically demands that people say, oh, it's good if I don't cut myself with a knife because I'd be spreading disease to other people. Okay, I won't do it. I'll just take a break. But for other people, it becomes more of a social political question of why am I being asked to do this thing for other people when I don't see the enemy. It's invisible.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it even real? When you can't see something, is it real? And I like to say that a lot of the world has never heard of germ theory and has never actually studied germs. They've never looked in a microscope and actually saw little critters that exist. So for folks that don't have that background, it just must seem like, I don't know, a fiction.
Yeah, it is hard. The way that this all became super clear to me was in just looking at the difference in the number of deaths per month this year versus the number of deaths per month years previous. And so you start thinking, well, like, people they're dying, but are they dying from COVID? And then you see the number of deaths increase from years past, and you go, oh crap, yes, like it is. There's not just that people are dying from Corona. There's like an increase in deaths, which is heavy.
I got my bachelor's in clinical psychology, so I had physical biology background and had to take statistics. And it's not common. Statistics don't work in a 1 + 1 = 2. If you give me a second apple and I've got an apple, I know there are two apples. You know, that's really easy to grasp. But when you say there's a increased statistical probability that this invisible thing will impact me or my family, and that probability goes from 1% to 10%, it doesn't seem like anything. Unless you happen to fall in that 9% expansion of risk. And then all of a sudden it's your parents have passed or your brother or sister have passed, and suddenly it becomes a real thing. And until then, I think it's hard.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, go ahead, Joe.
There was a Texas birthday party, a huge family gathering in North Texas. And they all got together, had a huge birthday party, huge family gathering. And then within days, many of them were hospitalized with COVID-19. One of the things that disturbed me is the lack of discipline with which many of us have to protect ourselves, to wear personal protective equipment, is going to further delay the nightlife venues, with which we can gather and network and whatnot, and be the fruition of our networking online, as an example. We've got to get it together as a society. Otherwise, we're going to lose something here. And we got to be careful not to lose that.
I'd say we already have lost, because the reality, in addition to my slight degree, I worked for 18 years in biotech, and 7 of those years was for a vaccine company. So I got exposed to the whole concept of pandemics and viral pandemics and how you respond to them and the time it takes and what you do and how it works. And, it's very clear that if you stop the ability for a virus to have a host, it has no host. It has no way to reproduce. Done. And, it no longer can jump from person to person because there's no people with it. Okay, pandemic over. But if you end up somewhere in between, halfway, half in, half out, you're going to get a half in, half out result. And this is why the citizens of the United States are being isolated from Europe. Yeah,
one dystopian lifestyle is being destroyed by another one. This is almost like a zombie movie. Living in a bad sci-fi movie that's just that's taken away one of our outlets. Music and music venues.
And the music venue thing, Stefan, I'd like you to talk about. We've talked a bit about the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic and how it shut down Balanced Breakfast, doing live venues. All the live venues have shut down. And we're not sure as a society if we're handling it in a way that we're going to get out the other end faster or slower. It looks like slower. What do we do until then?
Yeah.
Too many clubs have shut down permanently.
Yeah. Yeah. The hard thing in that is that if you flash back to January, I was pretty pumped because I had a lot of clients in the entertainment realm, and I was like, yes, I've got clients, and like they're all in the right industries and exactly where I want to be and doing what I want to be doing. It's like a mixture of restaurant, hotel, food, gym, that kind of stuff, and bands. And then as soon as this hit, and you're suddenly like, eliminate like all of the entertainment. So like, oh crap! Like I had all of my eggs in one basket. I had everything like collected together in one industry, and I was just like, this is not good. And then like Joe was saying, venues closed for a little while, but after 3 months, venues are like, well, we can't exist anymore. And then with the threat of another 3 months and possibly the rest of the year, it's like, how do you sustain rent? How do you sustain like being in a community that can't come out and partake in you? It's tricky. It's going to be a different industry when we do get back to whatever the new norm is, and what will it look like? And we like like, how long will it take us to be like, oh, I like this. I like this new norm, or I know how to thrive in this new norm. It's not good. It's going to be different.
And you and I have talked a bit about this because I'm an introvert, so I'm perfectly happy to be here in the studio on a computer doing my thing and interacting socially through Zoom and streaming and whatnot. But for folks that they're extroverts, they got to get out. You know, they're going out to coffee, meeting people, hanging out, socially networking, performing live every day. This has to be a complete and utter disruption of their lives.
Yeah.
Now,
in my situation, I was going to like one show a week, and if I was stressed out, I would try to think of another show I could go to, and if I was feeling a lack of creativity, I'd think of some sort of networking event or way to hang out with lots of people, whether it be dancing or a show. So I might say that I was going to one show a week, but realistically, I probably was going to 2 or 3 shows a week, and every day was a social day. And so this is absolute pure torture for me. That like every one of my habits has changed. Yeah, it's like my inspiration is hanging out at events with people, and then I feel creative. Where do I find that creativity from now?
And Joe, you are Joe about town. If you don't know anything about Joe, Stefan, I met Joe some years ago in the science fiction convention scene, and then the North Bay Renaissance Fair that used to be up in Novato, Black Point Forest. That was a whole culture in of itself. And also the Mission, the South of Market in San Francisco scene, all the clubs, DNA Lounge, Cat Club, all of those Joe has been an active participant in and has worked security for them and just, is well known around the communities. He's also in a motorcycle group. And how are you dealing with all that, Joe?
It's funny that you should mention that. While we're all talking here, I'm thinking something down the line will pop up or be formulated as a new invention of sorts that will give us a venue or a medium with which to go on with our musical expression, musical following, musical creativity and production. And one way is what we're doing right now. What we're doing here, being online like this, in a way, it's like a bunker. It's our bombshell. It's our bunker. But at the same time, this is our wellspring, in a sense, doing here. And it's full circle because we used to do this in the 90s with the burgeoning of BBS chat rooms, and music started getting passed around in an underground sense. And then it became, with the venues, with venues and broadcast radio and then streaming for to live, say in San Francisco. Then they moved to Oakland as this artistic migratory pattern from SF to Oakland and then Oakland to Vallejo or even up north. But something even bigger than the gentrification problem, this pandemic has really got us, underground. So, but at the same time, we coming here because a place online, the online presence has been very reliable, and it may not be the end all be all, but it's a good starting place. It was in the 90s, and it is yet again. It's like we've come full circle. I remember Caleb and I doing these things, going to San Jose nightclubs, looking at Voice Farm, and then just a couple of years ago, seeing Gary Newman at the Oakland Metro. Those venues were huge, but now all that has been taken away. So the next step in our creativity is how to thrive without necessarily having a venue, unless it's online.
And this show was born because Stefan very quickly recognized this and created an online festival for Balanced Breakfast, and I slated myself and a couple other acts up here in Seattle to perform. And after that performance, the friend called me up who remains unnamed. There'll be a mystery guest in the future. They called me up and said, hey, I liked what you did for the Balanced Breakfast thing. Could you do that on a weekly basis and show off different parts of your work, people that you're working with? And that's how this got born. So, Stefan, really, this show wouldn't exist if you hadn't done that.
Cool. Yeah. The thing about online is it's like, it is a nice way to discover music, but it's a really bummer way to like, it's really hard to touch people. It's really hard to like, feel that intimacy of like a hug or a handshake or, like sharing a space with someone. The energy, I don't know, I'm an empath. So when I am in a room with someone, like I can feel what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and this just cuts it off for me. I like it, but I don't come away from this feeling rejuvenated. I come away from this feeling absolutely exhausted, and it's like I like it. I like this because it helps educate people. It helps those that feel connected through video to feel like, oh, that was cool. I spent the last hour like listening to them talk and feeling like I was doing something. But for me, I walk away from it going, okay, I need to like chill for a second, because that took a lot of work. It's different.
It does. It does. And in a way, it's. I said earlier, we've come full circle, but in us at the same time, something like this is more like a new beginning of sorts, and it's a new beginning that people may poo-poo because it's not as intimate or as jovial as, say, a live performance, a concert or a club full of people and the club, band interaction. I get all that, and that these are luxuries that we are missing now. But at the same time, this venue of online, as I call it, being a new beginning, it may have some detractors. Remember, movies, silent film had their detractors from people doing live vaudeville shows. Television had their detractors from the film industry when teleplays of the early 50s came about, and people poo-pooed television. People from the film industry were threatened by and ridiculed television and so forth. And then streaming television and cable, and then now we have this. And so there's always the stragglers. Well, it wasn't like before, and it might not be like before, but it tests our creativity and it tests our imagination to come up with better things. And the final thing, unlike television, this is two-way communication. You see here, you'll have podcast, you'll have virtual concerts, yes, but then you'll have things like us where we could discuss.
Yeah, and I guess watching people kiss online isn't as much fun as kissing. So
yeah, that's where I was kind of going with it. I think you make a great argument there, Joe. But for what I heard in what Stefan was saying was that there's this, the just touching of a human being. And I know in the late 80s, we were magazines like Mono 2000 were all talking about online love and all this sort of virtual this and virtual that. And here we are in 2020. And there are a few people I know that hang out on virtual worlds and whatnot. Second Life in the 2000s and the Oculus stuff now. But the bottom line is physicality is physicality. And I know for myself, I had already been in a transition away from karaoke, but if this had all happened when I was still going full bore at karaoke, it would have hit me a lot harder because I'm hugging people, sharing mics, we're singing songs together. It's very collaborative and organic, where even doing this show and us connecting, which is fantastic for me because it has helped give me a social interaction life. It's still, I'm scripting out the stages of the show. I'm looking at the time. I'm not just being present.
Yeah. I think
So,
there are two things that are going to happen. These online shows are going to become like expected. Like even if you're doing live, I think in person there's going to be a little bit more expectation for video for those people that want to stay at home. And I think there's going to be an increased importance of your small in-person social circle, like those 7 or those 5 that are like your core circle are going to become that much more important, because when you're reducing your circle, your reach, and saying like, oh, no more gathering in large groups, so you'll be like, okay, well, who's part of my pod? Who's part of my small circle of like, these are the people that I can touch, and those people are going to be that much more important, or those relationships are going to be that much more important.
how much do you see this as a permanent shift in the culture? As soon as, I mean, I'm just waiting for the vaccine, right? I'm not going to interact and whatnot until I get a nice injection, and I've have some, reduced chance of having a problem, and so that's into next year. So sometime in 2021, we'll have all these therapeutics in place, vaccinations in place. Do you think the culture will just pretend like this never happened, or do you think there'll be a permanent
No.
change?
No, so I was okay. So if the way I think of it is, I think of like how spooked like media made me of AIDS in the 80s. Like I was young, and the media gave me all these like things about AIDS that like scared me to death of like how I was going to get it, like by drinking a water fountain. And so I, I carried that for a heck of a long time. And I think the people are going to carry this for a heck of a lot longer than just when the vaccine comes out.
Mm. Okay, and I think with N1H, with the N N1H1, that was the first time I was working at a vaccine company when it happened, and it's like as soon as it got to pandemic, right up there with pandemic level, literally like boxes just showed up on every employee's home front door. You didn't even think that, oh, my personal address, HR has that. It's just
Yeah.
something you filled out when you got the job. But actively, oh, when it hits a certain level, these packages are just automatically shipped out to employees, dropped in the door. We had our mask, we had our gloves, we had our potential subscription for antivirals, and we had to drive our vehicles to work in a certain pattern and park in a certain ways. And so I'd been through that, and so I'd been sort of prepped for this. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah,
Just like what's going to
that's
happen.
so I already kind of was primed to be thinking about it. So yeah, I could see where in the future people are going to say, well, this one might be past, but when's the next one going to hit?
Yeah, or this happened because of hugging and touching and group interaction.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that might become passe. I hope not, but that might become a passe thing. The group interaction, the physicality. I hope not, but you never know.
Yeah.
Certainly, like you mentioned, the '80s. I grew up with the '70s culture very deep in my mind, and the '80s came and flipped that '70s culture on its head. And I know the way friends interacted and whatnot of my age was different than people who went through growing up in the '80s and '90s. And I don't think that ever changed.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
became a niche crowd.
I guess I, it's hard to say like what's going to happen. I definitely am not approaching this from the standpoint of waiting for that vaccine. I'm trying to live in the moment of like, what can I do socially right now?
Yes.
Also trying to be like, this is going to be normal for longer than I'm comfortable with, and trying to follow like what seems like sane advice, and like approaching it like as things open, if it seems appropriate, like partaking in a way that feels responsible, and also hoping that like certain key things start opening up that financially support the things I do, but also like not too fast and not too wild and not too rodeo or a Wild West kind of style.
Yeah, it's that the making sure things are done in a way that there isn't the backlash that makes the situation worse.
Yeah.
Or sustained longer. I think we're already seeing that happen, and there's enough cases of enough countries that are opening up and being okay. And again, this is not the Black Plague. It's not like 50% of the population is dying all around us. So there is this odd middle ground with it, where it's not a high risk, but it's a risk that's higher than usual, and that's really tricky. But it's also a good opportunity to say, look, I'm not going to live in a bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Nice light topic.
Yeah, we went a little further in this that I originally thought when I was planning the show, I thought we'd just more talk about how online stuff has, picked up pace and it's become more popular, and how Balanced Breakfast is doing a fantastic job with all their online chat meetings in the cities and globally. And you've been putting together online festivals, and online festivals have just exploded where they're happening every 5 minutes. But we kind of got into the personal, but that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I will say our next thing we are approaching is we are exploring the idea of creating a new online community that will give people a place to connect via a Balanced Breakfast platform that will have a lot of the things that we offer in person in a digital platform. So that's the next thing that's coming, and trying to figure out what people expect in their online communities, what people want, what people consider a useful resource, and if they'll pay for it.
Part of the wonder of confronting problems, situations that we have today, part of the wonder is not having quite the answers yet, but we create those answers. We come up with the answer. We're the answer. And right now, what you're seeing this very minute is, at the very least, we have some of the tools with which to fabricate that answer and to evolve into other newer solutions.
Yeah.
And therein lies the creativity as well as the music.
But it's scary.
Yeah, and as I was saying earlier about virtual lives, where people are trying to control physical objects from their virtual worlds, that they felt that it had a physical component. I don't think having a Hug Me android that sits in the uncanny valley and is somewhat creepy hugging me. I guess Stefan wants to give me a hug, and then my local robot gives me a hug. I mean,
you don't want a hug. You don't want a hug suit that you can climb into your hug suit to get a hug from me.
Exactly. I mean, we've talked about that sort of thing being a possible solution over the decades. I'm not saying it. I think when I went out, did karaoke, or when you're out at a show interacting and talking with people, it's just something that can't be replicated in other ways. So all these opportunities online help, but I agree with Stefan, they're not the same. We're coming to the end of our show this week, and this is usually time when I do the mystic moment, but I felt like Joe was giving us the mystic moment throughout this episode. So I'm going to say your mystic moment for this week is to think about what Joe was saying about what are the ways in which we can bridge this gap of isolation closer toward what folks like Stefan are needing in physical connection. And ask yourself, who can I collaborate with? If Balanced Breakfast has a theme, or this show has a theme, it is collaboration. And the creative work that I've been involved with has been so much richer because I met people and collaborated with them. So I'd like everybody listening to the show to think this week, is there some way online I can collaborate with someone to do something creative. Maybe it's an interactive art piece where you sketch something on a piece of paper, scan it, or take a photo on your phone, send it to someone else. They sketch on that piece of paper, they take a photo back to you, and over time this photo changes and morphs and grows into something that otherwise would never exist. So that's your assignment for the mystical moment this week. I want to thank Stefan and Joe for joining, and Joe's now my regular sidekick, so we get to have some three-way conversations and some extra insights. And Stefan, again, I tapped you, I think maybe Thursday. I'm like, hey, I need someone on the show this week, and you jumped in. I greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work you're helping me with some software projects. And one last note before
you might be an executive producer.
more online opportunities. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I see the whole entertainment industry, kind of reeled with live production, but now a lot of the film scoring, all this stuff is happening with post productions and stuff, and they need someone to coordinate all that. And you're really good at coordinating things, Stefan.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
And then maybe you get a pod of other elite producers that you can, shake hands with.
Yeah.
Or at least fist bump and elbow.
Invest in those hug suits.
Invest in the future of the hug suit. I'm now gonna do a Google search and just put in hug suit, see what comes up.
Now with Backstage Plus.
I'm gonna say I think you have to be 21 or plus or 18 or plus to go onto that website. So just be careful when you click through.
Put me on the guest list.
Yeah.
Cool. And I wanted to say one other thing to some folks. I know in the beginning I was doing some live performances, and folks have said, "Hey, where are the live performances gone?" I've just had some technical problems here, and the vocals going out of sync with the audio and whatnot, but I am working on that. I now have an amplifier across the room that I can crank up and play songs. So I'm going to do, after we do the credits, I'm going to throw on the after party screen and do a improvised song. This was something that I wrote a couple years ago, and it seems appropriate. I haven't worked out the vocals. It's going to be totally slipshod, but hey, you asked for live performance, you're going to get live performance.
Get it.
Joe, and you guys want to stay online when I do this, or if you have to run, if folks have to run, just know that we are available online. I have 3 different band projects, Caleb, Audio Terrace, Queer Blue, available on Bandcamp and YouTube. Got lots of videos and pictures I've been posting recently of the bands, or you could reach out to me personally as Caleb Duarte on Facebook. For those who are like, I don't want to hear any raw vocals, I thank you for watching. But folks that want to stick around and see this, if this experiment works, then I'll start doing more live stuff. But you can already hear my voice is gone for whatever reason. There's something about this room and the heat when everything is running that seems to get to my voice. But I'm going to do a live song anyhow. So that means we're now in after party. Let me get things set up.
Nice. Yeah, and breakfast is easy to find too. Balanced breakfast, no vowels.
Yeah, while I'm firing up the amp, Stefan, tell people how the structured balanced breakfast exists online, because it's not necessarily intuitive.
Yeah, so anybody who wants to find Balanced Breakfast online, we are, you can find us Balanced Breakfast, no vowels, everywhere. And when you're on Facebook, Facebook has a lot of features that we've been trying to figure out better. So we have the Balanced Breakfast page. We also have the Balanced Breakfast groups, and we have a group for each of the cities. And in trying to create more opportunities for people to gather, there was a request for a Balanced Breakfast group that could combine all of the cities. So if you search for Balanced Breakfast and you find a group called Balanced Breakfast, that's why, is that there's a desire to actually have conversations across cities and not just in one particular city. So yeah, hit me up. I'm in all the groups, and my social media is easy too. First name, last name, Stefan Aronsen.
And folks, if you want to join one of these, they have Zoom meetings, usually once a month in the city. and a couple other ones that if you have, some are themed, some are multi-city communities. Just join up on Facebook and hit up Stefan to join one of these first meetings, and you can be a fly on the wall, see how it all rolls, or jump in with both feet and share what you're working on, and interact with the group in a way that unblocks you if you're feeling blocked in these times.
Yeah, join us.
All right, I'm gonna hit the audio here and see how this goes.
I'm gonna watch on social media.
Well, I got no audio. Oh, I see. Okay. It's always something. All right. So we're here testing performing live with the new amp setup. See if that works so we can bring live shows back to Sunday Live. And this is a track called Slow Burning Fuse that I first premiered at the Phoenix in San Rafael, Marin, California, a couple years ago, and it has sat on the shelf ever since. And I figure this will help me do a little jam session against it, and that will change the lyrics around, and then I can start to formulate this into a final version and put it out at some point. Corporations became people. Just like you and me. Oh, they've got to be free. But for how long? I don't know how much music came through on that. Give your comments down there, and I'll talk to Joe and Stefan and see what the balance is there.
That
How'd
takes
that
me
go?
back to Nick's.
What was that?
That takes me back to Nick's for karaoke.
Yeah, yep. That's it was partially that scene that inspired, and I think that that vibe in Berkeley and Oakland, and also in Marin, of the last 50, 60 years and how different trends have come and gone. And, well, I guess I started with 1969, so almost 100 years of culture. And so, I think the lyrics and the structure is still coming along. And but I really wanted to capture this idea that things come, they go, there are different trends. And yet there's always this tension there. And I think we're in a place where maybe people have always done it, but it's kind of like we're throwing gasoline on the fire in some ways. And there's a slow burning fuse. And I think this year it's finally hit, and there will have to be changes. But it's kind of like we've been just blowing on that that fuse harder and harder in the last 5 years. So that's what inspired that song.
Funny, we're used to thinking in terms of the last 5 years. Now we're having to think of it in terms of the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, or the last 5 days. Yeah,
things developing.
It's interesting because all these movements and crises, the housing crisis, the stock crisis, multiple ones, the Great Depression, all this stuff, and coming out of those crises usually is something better, is a better deal for the average person in the world. And whether you agree with social programs or don't, you have to admit that Social Security, access to resources, infrastructure, all that infrastructure that was built in the 1930s, that was all government spending where we took all of our taxes and we said, we're going to employ everybody to build the bridges and the roads and everything. So by the time World War II was over, all that was in place. And then for 20 years, everybody got to live off of that work. That was an investment. That wasn't just some side corporate thing that happened to happen. It was an organized national event that then created a benefit for 30 years. And I think history has a long story of how the average person might get cut off from their own ability to engage in a flourishing society. And when that tension happens, there's going to be eruptions. And sometimes those can go well. Sometimes they start going well and they get co-opted by another organization or group. And then they morph from there. But this is something that happens. It's not something unpredictable. It's not something alien to human history. But it is something to watch, understand, and to, if you can, participate in and help shape the world to being a better place for the average person.
Well said. I can't add to that.
Well, then I want to think, if I left Joe speechless, I have succeeded. Well, Joe, thank you for, again, helping out each week on the show and keeping it dynamic.
My pleasure. It's my absolute pleasure. It's our first cast in the new place. I'm on the deck outside. I don't know if you can see. This is an outdoor terrace, and
nice.
My bedroom is just about.
Hey, Joe, I had the wrong screen up. I still had my performance screen. So people have been seeing two shots of me. Let's bring Joe back on the camera. Okay. So, Joe, you recently moved.
Yes. Yes, I'm in not foothills. I'm in the hills of Berkeley. The shot you see behind me is the actual genuine shot of a sort of an outdoor balcony terrace gazebo. and just over this way is the kitchen and pantry, and behind me is my bedroom. Basically, I've moved from Kowloon City to Downton Abbey, and it's a beautiful house. It's 90 years old, essentially a mansion, and it's like three bathrooms, 5 bedrooms. A dear friend of mine, who was a neighbor of mine on the flats in the West Bay district of Berkeley, asked me to move in to rent a room from him because he had inherited this house. And it's a good friend of mine, and basically it's a very good turning point in my life right now, because now I'm here, not in Oakland, and I'm in a place that's stable and comfortable and safe. So with, not to mention, tremendous views. But the one bad thing, the network connectivity here is very good, which means the streaming television shows are very good, and I got to watch my intake. I'm going to be on Television Anonymous if I'm not careful.
Well, hopefully this show will break up your viewing and pull you aside.
Well, I dare say, up to this point, I haven't had a television in the better part of about several years. I haven't missed television. This is where I want to be. The internet. The internet is still, for all the bots, for all the the division, for all the bad programming, and all the pseudo experts that get online. The internet is still a library, a working, real life, functioning library of information. I can look things up on topics that I'm familiar with and love and am good at, and I can do further research to further me along in my fields of interest. And everybody could do that, or to protect myself, or to guard against myself. And and television can't compete with this. So
yeah, and I've seen this. I was worried that my wife's a big TV person, and we have all the channels and HBO and all this stuff. And I thought I was going to get sucked back in, but I've just been so busy helping my friend with the software company, with this show, with my 3 bands, that I sit there for more than 5 minutes, and I got to move on to something else. So what has been my outlet has been YouTube, because everything comes in a 5 to 10 minute chunk, and I can learn something about history, culture. I know I will get on my soapbox about stuff, and people are like, well, where did you learn all this? I'm like, I'm watching Curiosity Stream, and I'm watching, all these different educational programs that are available on YouTube. It's really a time in which you can absorb an incredible amount of information through the last 10,000 years of history and learn an instrument. It's how I figure out all my software problems. I rarely do a Google search and find anything anymore. It's clogged with ads. I go to YouTube, and there's someone who has done it. It could be a specific hard drive I'm trying to fix, and there's a guy who's done it and posted on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube is almost like TED Talks done right in some ways.
That's a good point. TED Talks are interesting, but they have to be not the TEDx, but the regular TED Talks are, you can only do one if you've done something no other human being has done. So if you're a researcher who's invented a way of sending data through light bulbs, then great, you get a TED Talk. In fact, there's one out there on that, and it's pretty fascinating. But I've yet to see any light bulbs on the market that run my data through the house. So it's more of a pure research environment and an inspiration of what is possible versus, how do I unclog my sink? And YouTube does a great job at that.
Yeah, it does. I've learned how to install disc brake pads for motorcycles. I've researched karate footwork on how not to hurt myself in the process, and things like that. Even something as oblique as sailing vessels, personal sailing craft, because I live very close to the water over here that's called the San Francisco Bay, and the Berkeley has a sailing club, and I'm learning things about, it could be a sailor's knot, or Bermuda rigging versus, lateen rigging, from the Mediterranean era, and that just as one example, how to safely ride a motorcycle has been some of the best things I've learned. How not to crash, how to ride a damn bike, and there's like 2 or 3 really reliable sources on YouTube on how to ride a bike safely, with fun, with exuberance, but with a safety, a strategy, and a plan of action. And it's made motorcycling so much more enjoyable. The fear factor has been replaced by the responsibility factor, and actually, again, that's a great example.
How is COVID-19 impacting your motorcycle group?
Well, it's interesting. Mad Dog MC is having a ride I want to say it's July 18th, I think is a Sunday, and several other clubs are going to be joining us. Basically, it's a stock ride from Southwest Berkeley to Alice's restaurant in I want to say down on the San Mateo Peninsula.
Yep.
Through Highway 9 and all that. Alice's is open for takeout. There's not sit down. They're open for takeout, and at the same time, there are stores across the street from Alice's, and they're basically like convenience stores, and they're open for takeout because if they're not restaurants, they're food stores. So we all eat in the parking lot and convene in the parking lot, because the parking lot is where the action is anyway, what with motorcycles and cars. And everybody, because in line with our protection as motorcycle riders, it's a natural next step to add on to that with personal protective equipment once we get off the bike.
So you already as a motorcyclist are thinking about personal protection all the time, helmets and essentially masks and leathers and.
It's just a next step. Remove the leather gloves. You have the rubber gloves, and you remove the face shield. You still have your face mask, and it's a logical next step for motorcycles. And it's just it's so natural. I mean, that's the thing about motorcycles. We like to protect ourselves, so it's almost instinctive. And I wish others would have this kind of instinct.
Yeah, I mean, we only know what we know. So if you didn't grow up riding motorcycles, if you didn't grow up taking biology classes, you didn't work for a vaccine company for multiple years, if those things are alien to you, this whole conversation that we're having, it has no basis. Well, then, I don't blame people for who don't have those backgrounds for not understanding what's going on and approaching it. Even for people who know what's going on, understand it, understand the biology of it, it's still not easy. Well, I want to leave everybody with that thought about motorcycling, and find a community that you can work with online. Don't isolate yourself. There is tons of stuff going online. Get off when Facebook gets toxic and all your friends are posting political stuff at each other. Just step away from that, because there are groups. There are groups on Facebook that are not like that. There are communities out there in the world who are not through Facebook or whatnot, but they might have an event posted on Facebook, but you connect them up with Zoom and you all talk and just stay focused on the creative living spirit and have that interaction. As Stefan was saying earlier, it might not be the same as getting a hug, but it can be better than hanging out at home alone. So,
absolutely.
With that, thank you again so much, Joe. I'm going to go ahead and sign off and go get some grub for dinner. Congratulations on the new living space, and look forward to seeing it next week.
Absolutely. Until next time. And then we'll explore I'll explore new methods of microphonery.
Okay, cool. Yeah, shoot me a message and we'll figure out a way to get you sounding good. All right,
absolutely.
Man.
All right, we'll catch you later.
Talk to you this week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
For folks wanting to know more about my work, you can go to Caleb Duart on Facebook. I also have a band camp for each band. You can find the band's released works on all the major platforms, but you can find demos and rarities at caleb.bandcamp.com, lauditerrace.bandcamp.com, queerblue@bandcamp.com, or over on YouTube. I've been posting a bunch of videos. I have a big box of videotapes that I'm actually digitizing and getting loaded up to YouTube for the various band projects. So check those out. And thank you so much for supporting the show and being here this week. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.